Okay, so get this.
Hmm.
While everyone was focused on Davos in the Swiss Alps, there was another gathering happening
Oh, yeah.
over in Dalian, China.
Uh-huh.
It's called Summer Davos,
Okay.
and it's put on by the World Economic Forum.
Interesting.
You might be thinking,
Yeah.
World Economic Forum, who cares?
Right.
But here's the thing.
Okay.
This unelected organization,
All right.
it's made up of some of the most powerful people and institutions on the planet,
Wow.
and they're setting global agendas that impact all of us.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. They have an incredible amount of influence.
So we're going deep on Summer Davos in this deep dive.
Awesome.
What were these elites talking about behind closed doors?
Yeah.
What does it mean for the future?
Mm.
And most importantly, what does it mean for you?
Right.
We're talking about some seriously surprising stuff.
Oh, like what?
From Poland, cozying up to China, to the potential for a Chinese stock market boom,
Wow.
fueled by trillions in savings.
That's a lot.
Yeah, so get ready to have your mind blown.
I'm ready.
All right, so...
Let's start with Klaus Schwab,
Okay.
the founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum.
Right.
His opening speech really set the tone for the whole thing,
Mm-hmm.
emphasizing his vision for the fourth industrial revolution
Okay.
and how it intertwines with the UN's Sustainable Development Goals.
Okay, so for those of us who aren't following every WEF pronouncement,
Right.
remind me, what's the big idea with the Fourth Industrial Revolution?
Well, it's about the blurring of lines between the physical, digital, and biological spheres,
Okay.
driven by technologies like AI, robotics, and the Internet of Things.
Right, and Schwab sees this revolution as the key to achieving the UN's Sustainable Development Goals.
Exactly.
But he also talked about AI and robots potentially displacing jobs.
He did.
So which is it? A
Yeah.
utopia of progress
Yeah.
or a dystopia of unemployment?
Well, he connects these two seemingly disparate concepts
Okay.
by suggesting that the wealth generated by the fourth industrial revolution
Mm-hmm.
could be used to fund these sustainable development goals,
Ah.
which, by the way,
Yeah.
are incredibly ambitious,
I was going to say,
Yeah.
ambitious is one word for it.
aiming to transform everything from poverty and hunger to climate change and inequality.
By 2030.
Yeah, that's right.
And how exactly does he plan on making all this happen?
Well, one of the ways is by penetrating governments,
Okay.
as he put it, with one of UEF's aligned individuals to push the agenda forward.
Interesting.
He actually cited Canada and Argentina as examples.
So it's like building a global network of influence from the inside out.
Exactly.
Wow.
And he's particularly focused on younger generations,
Okay.
grooming them for leadership roles
Mm-hmm.
through programs
Okay.
like the Young Global Leaders and Global Shapers.
Mm-hmm.
It's like he's building an army of next-gen globalists.
Interesting and ironic.
Right.
Considering a Wall Street Journal report alleged that he pushed out some of the WEF's older staff.
Indeed. So you have Schwab,
Mm-hmm.
this octogenarian championing youth,
Right.
while allegedly sidelining older voices
Mm-hmm.
within his own organization.
Makes you wonder.
It really does.
It certainly does. But let's move on to another interesting group at Summer Davos.
Okay.
The new champions.
Ah, yes.
Who are these folks?
Well, these are the up-and-comers.
Okay.
Executives from mid-sized companies around Yes. the world who are all in on the WEF's vision.
Okay.
You could say Summer Davos is their coming out party.
Interesting.
They're there to network with each other
Mm-hmm.
and demonstrate their commitment to the cause.
This year's theme was Next Frontiers of Growth,
Yes,
which sounds pretty vague.
it does.
What were they actually talking about?
It's all about reshaping the global economic landscape
Okay.
and positioning these new champions as key players in this new world order.
And speaking of reshaping the landscape,
Mhm.
we have to talk about the surprise appearance of Polish President Andrzej Duda.
Oh, yeah.
This is where things start to get really interesting,
Absolutely.
wouldn't you say?
Yeah, Poland has been a staunch ally of the U.S.
Right. Yeah.
and a vocal critic of China.
Exactly.
Yet here he is at Summer Davos,
Right.
making a pitch to Chinese investors.
Yeah, it's like he's playing both sides.
It seems that way.
So what was his pitch exactly?
He was selling Poland as the gateway to Europe,
Okay.
low taxes, a young workforce,
Mhm.
and direct access to the EU market.
It's a savvy move,
It is.
especially considering Germany's economic woes.
Right.
Poland sees an opportunity to become a major economic power in Europe.
For sure.
And by aligning with China, they're betting on the East rather than the West.
Exactly.
Mm,
And this could be a sign of things to come.
okay.
The BRICS nations, led by China, control so many essential resources.
Right.
We may see more European countries following Poland's lead.
This brings us to Adam Tooze,
Okay.
historian and Columbia University professor.
Yeah.
He gave a fascinating talk,
Good.
and frankly, a bit unsettling talk about the future of globalization.
Interesting.
He didn't shy away from the WF's role in shaping it.
Tooze was very candid,
Yeah.
acknowledging that globalization has had some negative consequences,
Right.
particularly for the lower and middle classes in developed countries.
Yeah.
But he argues that globalization itself isn't the problem.
Okay.
It's an unstoppable force.
Mm-hmm.
The real issue is the U.S. trying to resist China's inevitable rise.
So he's basically saying resistance is futile.
Pretty much.
Wow.
He believes attempts by the U.S. and EU to bring manufacturing back home
Okay.
will ultimately fail.
Mm-hmm.
They'll end up even more reliant on China.
Interesting.
Countries that recognize this reality early on, like Poland,
Right.
will be in a much better position.
He also made some pretty spooky recommendations, as he put it. Dad, what were those?
Well, he suggested the EU should exploit the next financial crisis,
Okay.
which he predicts is coming later this year,
Oh, great.
to further centralize power and expand the influence of the euro.
Wow.
And his vision for the U.S.
Yeah.
He sees us becoming a sort of retirement home for the West, focused on quality of life for an aging population,
Mm-hmm.
while relying on cheap Chinese goods for everything else.
Okay, so we've got rising tensions between the U.S. and China,
Yeah,
the potential for a new economic world order with Europe caught in the middle,
right.
and a whole lot of uncertainty about the future.
It's true.
What does this mean for the U.S. dollar?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Is it really going to be replaced by the yuan?
That was a hot topic at Summer Davos,
Yeah.
especially during a panel discussion on the fragmentation of the global financial system.
Right, because the sanctions against Russia really sent shockwaves through the global economy.
They did.
Jonathan Crane, CEO of Crane Shares,
Mm-hmm.
pointed out that Western investors are hesitant to engage with China now
Right.
because they're afraid of similar repercussions.
Makes sense.
And when the panelists were asked directly if the yuan was poised to challenge the U.S. dollar's dominance,
Right.
even the pro-China voices were hesitant.
Really. Why is that? I thought China was making a big push to internationalize the yuan.
They are, but there's a major obstacle.
What's that?
The Chinese bond market.
Oh, okay.
As Kung Shengfen, who runs an asset management firm in Hong Kong, explained, it simply lacks the depth and liquidity of the U.S. bond market.
Okay, so even if countries wanted to dump the dollar,
Right.
they need a stable and reliable alternative.
Exactly.
And right now, the yuan doesn't fit the bill.
Exactly. However,
Yeah.
there's a fascinating twist to this story.
Okay.
Remember Bonnie Chan?
Yeah, the head of Hong Kong Exchanges and Clearing.
Right. She was talking about how China is poised to become the world's largest economy.
That's right.
Well, she also pointed out that Chinese citizens have over $30 trillion in savings sitting idle.
Wow, that's a lot of money.
But yeah, that's an insane amount of money.
It is.
What's going to happen to all that cash?
Well, the prediction is that these savings will eventually flow into the stock market,
Okay.
similar to how Americans invest their savings.
Okay.
This could potentially create a Chinese stock market boom, unlike anything we've ever seen.
Wow, that would be a game changer.
It would.
And it's interesting to note that BlackRock CEO Larry Fink has been calling for countries with high savings rates to encourage stock market investment.
Oh, interesting.
BlackRock, as you know,
Yeah,
is one of the largest asset managers in the world,
it is.
and they have a close relationship with the WEF.
So are they basically nudging China in that direction?
It's certainly possible, but there's a catch.
What's that?
Just like with CBDCs, you can create the infrastructure,
Yeah,
but you can't force people to use it.
right.
Whether Chinese citizens will actually embrace stock market investing the way Americans have remains to be seen.
I see.
So we've got a lot to unpack here.
We do.
Klaus Schwab's vision for the future, the rise of China,
Yeah.
the potential for a global economic power shift,
Right.
and a whole lot of questions about how it's all going to play out.
It's true.
But now we're about to enter the real pressure cooker,
Uh-oh.
the U.S.-China relationship.
And based on what we heard at Summer Davos,
Yeah.
things are getting heated.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. The panel on U.S.-China relations
Okay.
was definitely the most intense of the entire conference.
Oh, wow.
You could feel the tension in the room.
You mentioned it was like a powder keg.
It was.
So who lit the fuse?
Well, Robin Niblett,
Okay.
a prominent voice in international relations, came right out and said it.
Yeah.
We're in a new Cold War.
Wow.
A zero-sum game
Okay.
where only one superpower can prevail.
Hmm.
He believes a world where the U.S. and China both thrive is simply impossible.
Wow, talk about a pessimistic outlook.
Yeah.
Did anyone else share his view?
Lin-Min Wang from
Yeah.
Brookings Institution
Okay.
echoed those concerns,
Okay.
but he focused on a more immediate threat,
Okay, what's that?
the potential for an accidental conflict in the South China Sea.
Right. That's a hot spot we hear about a lot in the news.
It is.
But what makes it so dangerous?
Well, China has been increasingly assertive in
Right.
claiming territory and resources in the region,
Mm-hmm.
building artificial islands, and deploying its navy.
Right.
Lin-Min Wang specifically mentioned the recent incident where the Chinese Coast Guard used water cannons against Filipino supply ships
Oh, wow.
headed to a disputed shoal.
Right, I remember reading about that.
Yeah.
And wasn't there also talk about China potentially seizing control of Taiwan?
Right. Well, that's always a looming threat.
Okay.
But Lin-Min Wang's point was that
Yeah.
even a smaller incident like the one with the Philippines
Mm-hmm.
could spiral out of control,
Okay.
especially considering the U.S. has a mutual defense treaty with the Philippines.
Right.
Any direct confrontation between U.S. and Chinese forces could escalate quickly.
So it's not just a war of words?
No.
There's a real risk of things turning hot?
I think so.
What was the reaction from the other panelists?
Well,
Yeah.
Hong Kong professor Li Chen offered a different perspective,
Okay.
reminding everyone of Henry Kissinger's famous quote, "To be an enemy of the U.S. is dangerous,
Mm-hmm.
but to be a friend is fatal."
That's a pretty chilling statement.
It is.
What was he getting at?
He was highlighting the precarious position
Okay.
many countries find themselves in.
Right.
Siding with the U.S.
Mhm.
can drag them into conflicts that don't necessarily serve their interests.
Yeah, like what's happening in Ukraine.
Exactly.
But distancing themselves from the U.S.
Yeah,
risks facing economic
right.
or even military pressure from China.
It's true.
It's a tough spot to be in.
It is.
And the fact that the European audience reportedly laughed when he said that speaks volumes.
It does.
They know firsthand the risks of being a U.S. ally.
Exactly. It's like they're caught between a rock and a hard place.
Right.
And if we think about the situation in Ukraine,
Yeah.
it's clear that NATO historically
Right.
has been a tool to further U.S. interests,
Mm.
often at the expense of its European members.
So what's the way forward?
That's the question.
How do countries navigate this increasingly multipolar world where the U.S. and China are vying for dominance?
Well, there was a lot of discussion about the need for a more balanced approach.
Okay.
Some panelists argued that other countries need to band together
Mm.
and hold both the U.S. and China accountable to international law and norms.
That sounds good in theory,
It does.
but is it realistic given the current state of global affairs?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Both sides seem to be playing by their own rules.
It seems that way.
That's the million-dollar question.
It is.
And it's something for all of us to consider as we try to make sense of this rapidly changing world.
Absolutely.
So where did summer Davos leave us?
Yeah, good question.
We've got geopolitical tensions,
Mm.
economic uncertainty, and
Yeah.
the potential for conflict.
For sure.
What was the overall takeaway?
Well, the closing remarks by WEF Managing Director Mircea Tănescu
Okay.
were a bit underwhelming, to be honest.
Really?
He gave a rather dry summary of the key takeaways,
Mhm.
mostly focusing on the importance of ESG investing.
ESG, for those who don't know,
Yeah.
stands for environmental, social, and governance.
That's right.
It's basically an investment strategy
Mhm.
that prioritizes companies that score well in these areas.
Exactly.
Right. And it's being heavily promoted by organizations like BlackRock and the WEF
It is.
as a way to fund the UN's Sustainable Development Goals.
Right.
So it's not just about making money.
Mhm.
It's about using investment capital to steer the world in a particular direction.
Exactly.
And with the WEF increasingly focused on China,
Right.
we can expect to see ESG principles play a major role
Oh, yeah.
in shaping future investments and development projects,
Mhm.
particularly in Asia.
Right.
But here's the question for you, the listener.
Okay.
What does all this mean for you?
Yeah.
How might it affect your life, your finances, and your country's position in the world?
That's something we all need to think about.
Right.
We're living in a time of unprecedented global change.
Yeah.
The old world order is crumbling. And a new one is emerging.
Okay.
The rise of China, the decline of the West,
Right.
the emergence of new technologies.
Right.
These are forces that will shape the 21st century.
So are we talking about a future where China calls the shots? Or is there still a chance for a more balanced world order?
I don't know.
And where does that leave countries like the U.S.?
Right.
Caught somewhere between the declining West and the rising East.
These are complex questions with no easy answers.
And that's why we're here to help you make sense of it all.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in for sure.
It is.
Summer Davos, it was a whirlwind of big ideas, bold predictions,
Right.
and some pretty stark warnings about the future.
Yeah, it's easy to feel overwhelmed by it all.
It is.
But I think one of the key takeaways is this.
Okay.
We're not just passive observers in this global drama.
Okay.
We have agency, we have a voice,
Right.
and we have a role to play in shaping the future.
Okay. I like that. So it's not all doom and gloom.
Not at all.
Okay. But it does require us to be informed,
Right.
engaged, and maybe even a little bit proactive.
Okay.
Can't just bury our heads in the sand and hope for the best.
Right. All right, so let's break it down.
All right.
What are the actionable insights from Summer Davos?
Yeah.
What should our listener be thinking about as
Yeah.
they go about their day?
Well, first and foremost,
Yeah.
it's crucial to understand that the world is changing at an unprecedented pace.
Right.
The rise of China, the shifting balance of economic power, the rapid advancement of technology.
Yeah.
These are forces that are reshaping the geopolitical landscape
Right.
and impacting every aspect of our lives.
Yeah. I think a lot of people sense that things are changing,
They do.
but it's hard to grasp the scale and the speed of it all.
It is. That's why it's so important to stay informed
Okay.
and to think critically about the information we consume.
Right.
There's a lot of noise out there.
Yeah.
A lot of competing narratives and agendas vying for our attention.
Yeah. It's like trying to drink from a fire hose.
It is.
So we need to be discerning
Right.
who's telling the story
Think
and what are their motivations? What are they leaving out?
Right. We need to develop our own filters,
Okay.
our own sense of what's credible and what's not.
And I think that ties into another key takeaway from Summer Davos.
Okay.
The power of unelected organizations like the World Economic Forum.
Yes.
They're not governments, they're not accountable to voters,
Right.
but they wield an incredible amount of influence over global agendas.
That's true. And it's not just the WEF.
Right.
There are a number of powerful institutions and individuals operating behind the scenes, shaping the world according to their vision.
So what can we do about it?
Right.
I mean, we're not all billionaires or CEOs or heads of state.
Right.
Does our opinion even matter?
Of course it matters.
Okay.
We may not have the same level of influence as the elites gathered at Summer Davos,
Yeah.
but we do have power. The power of our voices, the power of our choices,
Right.
and the power of collective action.
Okay, so what does that look like in practice?
Well, it starts with awareness,
Oh.
understanding the forces at play, the agendas being pursued,
Right.
the potential consequences of the decisions being made.
Right.
Once we have that awareness,
Right.
we can start to make informed choices in our own lives.
So are we talking about things like where we invest our money,
Yeah,
what products we buy, who we vote for?
absolutely. Those are all ways we can exercise our agency
Right.
and align our actions with our values. And don't underestimate the power of simply speaking out,
Okay.
sharing information, engaging in dialogue,
Right.
and holding those in power accountable.
It's easy to feel powerless in the face of these massive global trends.
It is.
But you're saying that even small actions can make a difference.
I truly believe they can.
Okay.
The future is not predetermined.
Right.
It's being shaped right now
Yeah.
by the choices we make individually and collectively.
That's a powerful thought.
It is.
So to our listener, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Summer Davos.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
It's been a journey, hasn't it?
It has.
I hope it's been thought-provoking,
Me too.
maybe even a little bit inspiring.
Yeah.
The world is changing,
Is.
and it's up to all of us to decide what kind of future we want to create.
That's right.
Stay curious, stay informed, stay engaged,
Absolutely.
and most importantly, don't be afraid to make your voice heard.
Couldn't have said it better myself.